Alright, another week, another Grandmaster Nightfall. Here's what you need to know. Here's how this is going to be made easy for the most people. Starting off with the GM modifiers for this week. This time, Unstoppable and Overload champions. We're also dealing with Epitaph this week, so watch out for Blight Geysers whenever you kill taken opponents. A 25% increase to incoming arc damage, and the overcharged weapons are Stasis, Solar, and overcharged rocket launcher. And besides that, the remainder of the modifiers are GM standard, wipe when your fire team dies, capped power, etc, etc. Now that the modifiers are out of the way, we have to start looking into what a team composition should be. As always, you cannot go wrong with 1-1-1 split. Of that split, Warlocks should probably be playing well of Radiance. Titans can do whatever they want, and Hunters, for this particular GM, I would recommend going with Solar, same thing as last week. It's really easy to keep up Infinite Radiance, Infinite Restoration, and just having the Celestial Nighthawk to deal with enemies in an instant and one-shot any and all stunned champions, as long as you're hitting them in their crit spot with the Celestial Nighthawk Golden Gun will be ideal. And finally, I would recommend that Titans be playing Strand so that they're able to suspend opponents and have the Super plus the Banner of War just for regeneration and insanely high damage to all the trash mobs and infinitely splitting Scions. It's just a really good idea to be running Strand. You will see why specifically later. Moving on to weapon recommendations, since this strike is made up of almost entirely taken opponents, it's hard for me to not recommend Wish Ender. Wish Ender is just a fantastic bow for dealing with everything. There are no barrier champions in this strike, so you might want to consider something else, but you can't go wrong with Wish Ender. Items that have intrinsic Unstoppable and have the ability to deal with unstoppable champions easily are also going to be ideal. Those are things like Malfeasance and Polaris Lance. Malfeasance from the intrinsic Unstop, and Polaris Lance from the ability to spread Scorch Explosions so easily, which are going to not only deal with crowd control, but are going to stun the unstoppable champions due to the nature of Scorch. Following this same vein of thought, Dragon's Breath, if you want to use an exotic heavy weapon, is going to be a great option. Most of the targets in this strike are big and chunky, so they're going to be easy to hit. You're not dealing with a lot of little things, with the exception of the final boss. Apart from those exotics, use what you're comfortable with. You're looking for at least one champion coverage per person. Ideally, you have two. If you're running something on stop, you're going to be looking for an auto rifle or a pulse rifle for the overload. And if you're running overload, you're going to be looking for someone with hand cannon or a bow for unstop, as long as they can use those artifact mods. Every member of my team ran double primaries just so we were able to have coverage for champions all of the time, and we were all using heavy weapons that had area control, myself with an incandescent light machine gun, my two teammates both with rocket launchers. Besides these weapon issues, builds are more preferential. The only thing I would recommend, as always, is having 100 resilience just for the most damage protection, the most damage mitigation, and the most health. Other than that, pick your poison, whatever suits your build, whether it be grenade, intellect, super, whatever you want to do, realistically. On to the actual gameplay of this strike. I haven't mentioned it until now because this is the only time when it begins to get complicated when using this elevator sequence. You're going to want to prime the taken orbs for both of the elevators, and immediately after the Scions are defeated or waiting until the shielded enemies are spawned, ideally you should be able to kill all of the Scions with area of effect weapons just so they don't split infinitely, and then you can throw the orb and kill the elevator enemies fairly simply. You shouldn't mess this up. The only time you're going to mess this up is when you throw the orb too early and you need to prepare another one. Also, you need to be careful when the door for the elevator opens. Don't be like me. Don't stand in the middle and just waiting to get shot by ogres and knights in the acolyte's eye. As soon as the elevator is parked until you get to the dimension swapping room, this is just slow and steady wins the race. As always, the time is basically a suggestion when it comes to these Grandmaster Nightfalls. As long as you aren't throwing and not shooting enemies, you're going to have enough time to sit back and make sure you kill everything before you move forward. There are 2 more champions you need to deal with before you get to the dimension swapping mini boss, along with some knights where if you miss to them or let them run away after you come off the elevator, they'll be camping in the next room. But I'm just going to skip ahead real quick to the first real mini boss, the section where you're going to be swapping dimensions. You can do this one of 2 ways. You can either do what my fire team is doing currently, camping on the stairs and using the ability to back up as your main point of leverage, or you can camp on either of the 2 balconies and shoot down. Personally, if you're having a little bit trouble dealing with the enemies, I'd recommend using the stairs, but the stairs does have one big issue. Personally, even though I'm a big fan of the sit back on the stairs and camp strategy, it does have some notable downsides in that you aren't going to be able to easily access all the champions if you're going for platinum rewards, and in certain instances, if you tunnel vision on the boss and aggro the wrong enemies, you could potentially find yourself in a situation where on screen you're seeing that the pole that we're using for all of our cover is blocking us, and they just sneak up behind you and kill you immediately. It's fairly tragic whenever that happens, but nothing that isn't avoidable in the future, so this is the run immediately after that because it doesn't take very long to get back to this point. These runs are both done in the span of around 30 minutes. As always, slow and steady wins to race. The thing to consider is if you are not going out and actively seeking the champions while sitting on the stairs, you're going to miss them, because once you kill both of the bosses, the champions that are in this mini boss room, 2 unstoppables, will despawn. Finally, once you kill both the bosses, if you are in the Taken realm, you want to be careful of the Acolyte Eyes because they do not despawn, and there's going to be a portal that spawns, taking you back to the normal world. As soon as you leave this portal, you're basically going to be face to face with 2 unstoppable champions, so make sure you're just able to deal with them immediately. If you have a Titan, have them pop their super if they saved it. If you can spread overload, just overload them or unstop the champions, because there are 4 unstopped champions and 2 overload champions that are going to be in your face almost immediately and sniping you. So just being able to deal with that is going to be the only way you can survive, obviously. Working your way down the stairs, you have to not forget about the overload champions. They aren't going to go away. Alongside that, there is a wanted mini boss that is still here from the old Forsaken days, if you do remember that, and it's not the easiest to kill because of the shields, but if you have Radiant and Armor Piercing, you can just pierce the shields that the Vandal boss spawns. And as always, don't forget to kill the champions if you want to go for platinum rewards. You can just skip these champions at this point if you don't feel like killing them, but always good practice. Kill the champions for the revive tokens, kill the champions so you can get platinum rewards. My only piece of advice for this next bit of strike when you're doing the jumping down, weaving through the Taken Blights, is let one person do it at a time, because if you die or when you're falling, there's no way for your teammates to go back up to get you. But if one person does make it to the bottom, then you're going to get adjoining allies, and you're going to be put in a ideal spot. So just make sure to do that one at a time, just so you all don't die to the blights, and just so the orbs aren't put in the wrong place at the wrong time. I'm just skipping ahead for a second, but as you're jumping down, just make sure, platform to platform, kill the enemies. There are a couple champions that you do need to deal with. Make sure everything is dead before jumping down, which is why having longer range weapons like scout rifles or even auto rifles are going to be ideal for staying safe while being as quick as possible to go through. From here, there's only a couple more overload champions to deal with before you get to the first phase of the final boss. I'm just going to skip there real quick. Be careful with the jumping, and when you get to the boss arena, there is a place you can camp where I'm currently standing now. This is the safest place to be while you're killing Sedia. They realistically aren't going to be able to hit you if you're using the cover, and same thing, the adds, the knights, and the scions aren't going to be able to get onto this platform. However, if you jump to the next platform, they will be able to kill you from there, and plus, when you're standing here, you have the long range advantage. Always kill all of the adds before you even attempt to break the boss's shield, because once you break the boss's shield, the next wave of adds spawn. Infinite ads do not spawn here. However, the scions will replicate infinitely, so you just got to make sure you're killing them and you don't leave one, because if you leave one, pretty soon you'll have to deal with 20. And you can do this as a group or just go one at a time to break the shield. It's a little bit easier to go as a team just so you can be covered when the next wave of ads spawns. But as always, pass the ball to one teammate before hitting the boss with it, and make sure you're coordinating when you're doing that, just so you can be in position, because Sedia at this point is on a timer. Even though the boss's health bar is split into 4 distinct sections, you can over damage, quote unquote, these sections. It is possible to kill Sedia in this room if you burn through all your supers and all of your heavy ammo. I think with 3 Celestial Nighthawks and debuff, it is able to one-shot the boss in this room. But if you're not doing that, you're going to be stuck doing 2 phases of the final boss. Same rules apply until you get the boss to half HP. Then you're going to see the ground you're standing on currently is going to turn into a turnback zone, and it will kill you if you're still standing here. So you need to be sure you're able and ready to jump onto the next platform in front of you so you don't die. The strike arguably gets easier from this point, with the exception of me dying to the groups of scions, but once you're done clearing this out, you can not clear it out, but if you just try to run through all of the enemies, you're probably going to die. So best practice is always safety, so just make sure you're killing everything before you're running through. Alright, once you're done moving up, moving through this Taken dimension, killing all the champions along the way, the Taken Knights, the Taken Scions, you're going to be faced with the final boss arena. The most important thing to consider is to not stay in the same place. Keep on moving and focus the ads before you focus the boss. The ads are going to spawn in several waves. The first wave is going to spawn when you initially jump on the platform. The second wave is going to spawn when you break the boss's shield for the first time. And if you can kill the boss quick enough, a third wave will not spawn. The best way to deal with this is to just make sure you're not saving anything. Don't save your heavy ammo. Don't save your supers if you can avoid it, because if you're using melee supers, you're not going to be able to hit the boss. If you're using well, you can argue that you can stay in the same place while you're in the well, but the boss has such a small health pool and such a high critical hit modifier that it's going to be harder almost to deal with the ads that are spawning, because as long as you're moving, the boss can't hit you with the wombo combo double tap that is able to one-shot, and if you're always moving, the boss isn't going to be able to pin you down with the Taken Blast. Same thing with the enemies that are going to spawn. And now, as always, we're going to finish the strike here by passing the ball to your teammate, and me, I'm just going to shoot her in the face with the golden gun, doing an absolutely insane amount of damage. But yeah, here we are, we're done with the strike. Now, on this particular run, we didn't get platinum rewards, spoiler alert, because as I was saying, during the dimension shifting boss room, we didn't kill all of the champions, because once you kill the 2 bosses, all of the champions associated with those bosses despawn. So in the end, we missed a singular champion that prevented us from getting platinum rewards. But apart from that, that's how you do the strike. It's very easy. I would encourage everyone to try to do it. The reward this week is the legendary sniper Uzime RR4. It's one of the better endgame snipers. Not the best, but still very usable. And apart from that, thank you for watching. I'll be doing the solo Grandmaster relatively soon. Try to get that out soon. And you all have a great day.